Hello? Let me drink some water. Hold. Okay, so before we get started, real quick, doesn't have anything to do with the talk. For you all, could you please raise your hand if you've read and are familiar with a paper entitled How Complex Systems Fail? All right. For those of you not familiar with this, you can Google it, you'll find it easily. And I'm confident actually, that your neighbors in the audience who did raise their hand would tell you that it was worth it. Okay, so first, some little bit of disclosure, warning, expectations setting. I've never given this talk before, and I did finish it 12 minutes ago. I'm not sure how this is going to go. Have you ever felt like you weren't sure how it was going to go? I'm at SREcon. Just thinking, have you ever been responding to an incident and your coworker, you're trying to work out, and you and your coworkers are like, oh, it's probably this thing. Is this, probably this thing. Okay, well, if it's this thing, we should probably do X. We should probably run this command. It should fix everything. Yeah, if it's definitely that, we should run this. It should fix everything. And you're just about to hit enter on that command, and you thought, not sure how this is going to go. And that's what's happening right now with me. So this is the quote that I riffed on when coming up with the title for the talk. This talk is about thinking critically about common beliefs that we have in this community, so sort of questioning conventional wisdom, because some things may end up, well, being misconceptions, whatever. So it ain't what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. This was written by Mark Twain, or there was maybe it might not have been Mark Twain, it could have been some other people, but definitely somebody wrote that. So let me give you an example, like not an SREcon sort of style. It means like a general, broad, mainstream for the normals. Think about a common misconception, and then I'll throw some cold water on it. So for example, the Great Wall of China is not visible from space. Turns out. If anybody heard that? Has anybody heard that before? That you could see it from space. Turns out that's not true. Here's one that I heard when I was really little, that a penny dropped from the Empire State Building will not kill anybody if it hits them in the head, right? So, great. This is just an example of misconceptions, things that we say, but there's no real cost to debunking these. Matter of fact, they're like, basically, to say that they were true is like cocktail party. Hey, did you know? Fun fact, trivia. And then like, if they're not true, you still get to say, did you know? Fun fact, not true. So these aren't things that matter, but I just want to get it across. My colleague, David Woods, said this to me a couple of years ago. He said, we cannot call it a scientific field unless we can admit we've gotten things wrong in the past. Here's Dave. This is a younger Dave. He's giving testimony at the Senate Science Committee on the future of NASA. This is 2003, in the wake of the Space Shuttle Columbia They had these hearings on Capitol Hill. Here is a more modern, more up-to-date photo. I get to work with him. This is what the kids these days call a flex. So, do we do this? As a community, do we admit that we've gotten some things wrong in the past? Do we have a record of being productively skeptical of our assumptions or our implicit beliefs about our work? Do we ever revisit this conventional wisdom, in a critical thinking way? Well, I've got some ideas on that. I've got some things to tell you. But first, are we a scientific field? Do we make productive use of empirical research to inform how we do our work? Not rhetorical. Feel free to answer in any way you would like. Yes? No?
No, we're not scientific. Yes, we make productive use of it.
Mike, I will accept sometimes. I think we absolutely are, even one that warrants real attention from real scientists to study our world. I did that. But amazingly, the fact that I was able to pull that off is nothing compared to the fact that, well, first, it's not 2015 anymore. There's been a lot more practitioners who've become practitioner researchers. So I'm going to try something real quick. If you see me showing your research up on the screen, I want you to raise your hand and say, "That's me," out loud, okay?
That's me.
"That's me," she said. Chad is not here, but I'm going to include him, in, at least for the recording. Chad, good work.
That's me.
That is you.
That's me.
And I do know that Michael Weddick is not here, but he also managed to do this and had the most amazing and handsome supervisor. Many of you also saw Courtney Nash and Laura McGuire's talk yesterday. They presented their research on trade-offs being made in time-pressured, consequential scenarios. My point here is not just that we have a responsibility to our field to think critically about what we take as a given and accurate, but there's a growing and energetic number of us who are demonstrating expertise as scholars in doing this so well, enough to play in the big leagues of academia. So let's come back. Borston does a much better job than Mark Twain or somebody with this quote: "The greatest obstacle to discovery is not ignorance, it's the illusion of knowledge." So here's my plan, as I mentioned. You're going to forgive me, please, if I screw this up. I want to do a quick sort of leisurely tour through a couple of very, specific misconceptions. Some of them are maybe more like topics or groups of misconceptions. So that's sort of the plan. I think we do revisit, and we have some history, and this is one of the first one here, is something that if I were to broaden what I mean by our field, right, for a minute, to include all programming work, I can find a real demonstration where we've confronted ideas that were once thought to be taken as gospel. And so that is on the topic of engineer productivity. So it turns out, up until the early 90s, the accepted way, the standard way to track and understand software engineers' productivity was amazingly simple. You counted the lines of code they wrote until some genius, after what I can only assume was at least 30 seconds of thinking about it, said and wrote, hey, I think this is kind of bullshit. And this was Capers-Jones, who said the use of lines of code metrics for productivity and quality studies is to be regarded as professional malpractice starting in 1995. So I don't know if any of you remember the 90s, but this is a mic drop in the 90s. So great. We've got a real world. It was a very big deal for many, many years. Matter of fact, it came because programming in Fortran and COBOL on punch cards meant that lines of code had a physical manifestation, right? Turns out no longer was a very good measure, didn't indicate anything, but people were tabulating it, thinking it did. Here's something also that you might come across from time to time. The idea that a change is either the only cause of incidents, or it's the leading cause, or the variations of it. Has anybody ever heard of this? Maybe you make a change, code change, and biggest cause. What's that?
Why do we have freezes?
Yeah, somebody is reading ahead.
Maybe you're just predictable.
Feature or a bug. Now, Gartner, I want to be just open here. I don't have enough money to buy the report from Gartner. However, they had said in 2015 that 85% of performance incidents can be traced to changes. Now, listen, all of this may or may not be true, but there's nothing specific about this. It just brings me to think, and I want to propose a couple of ideas. For me, my experience is that, and let me know if I'm off base here, changes are also one of the leading causes of resolving incidents. I also think that all prevented incidents are also triggered by making changes. So sorry, I just want to make sure I understand this right. So changes are bad. Changes are bad. Changes are good. So, what were we talking about? Like, what were we trying to do? So this sort of fuzzy, gray, blobby, weird, hard to pin down type of conventional wisdom or sometimes even implicit in the way we talk about it. Like, we talk a lot about a code freeze, but underlying it is an assumption. Sometimes we can revisit an assumption and it turns out to be true, which is great. That's how science works. It's called validation. Sometimes you revisit, like, don't think that's a thing. Are you sure that's a thing? I'm not talking about being, a ranty jerk. I'm talking about productive skepticism, inquiry. So this next one is a little bit of a cheat, and you'll understand why it's a little bit of a cheat. So it's 2018. I wrote a blog post about calling into question, how is it, what do these, we're gathering all these numbers in or around incidents that don't have anything to do about the content of the incident, but it certainly has to do with the dimensions of the incident, like the frequency of incidents over time, the length of different portions of these incidents. This was a really satisfying to write blog post, but I didn't do much it doesn't matter. Since then, Courtney Nash has destroyed the topic. And if you haven't seen or read things that Courtney on this topic, and has very much expanded and gone in incredibly interesting and discussion-provoking directions. If you haven't seen or read any of her work on this, then you're absolutely missing out. You totally should put it on your to-do list. Okay, so next one. this sequence. I see often framings like this, where incidents will follow particular steps. Sometimes they're called steps. Sometimes they're called phases. Sometimes the whole thing is called a cycle. Sometimes it's called life cycle. Sometimes it's called different things. It's quite common to think of them in this way. And it might be really productive in certain circumstances. But again, like, there are variations of this. This is a variation which is different in a visual way. This one here is really clearly took a lot of time for somebody to put together. But when we look in our experience in this community at real incidents, it's weird because they never feel as neat and orderly and crisp as they do on the slide. As I was making the slide, I was thinking, oh, wow, this particular representation certainly looks like Excel. Like, you're only like one formula of average away from, getting your work done. Is this how all incidents play out? Is this how most incidents play out? Can we assume that enough incidents play out this way-ish, that we can ignore or dismiss those that don't? See, the whole front row said, what do you mean by an incident? You are my tribe. We can make some assumptions. And if we make the assumptions like there is no friction or that the cat is a cube, then things can work, but they are contortions. They are, and you may say to yourself, and you would be right, John, come on, man. We all know this. It's a thing. Fine. We get it. It's just a model. We're very smart. Everybody understands this. But do they? I do know this, that I have experience, my organization, and some of you might have experience with organizations that reward, punish, and will base significant business resourcing, all sorts of critical decisions based on numbers which critically depend on that model of sequence being assumed to be concretely accurate. Consequential decisions based on that. So it's not just like, hey, it doesn't go like that. It's like, hey, it doesn't go like that because 3 steps away of that assumption, somebody's getting a report or getting some data, some numbers, and they're going to make some decisions based on that. I'm going to walk you just because I love the topic. I'm going to walk you through, there's a real incident, but ironically, I'm oversimplifying. So you've got something normal, just a regular afternoon, and somebody notices, that's weird. Not shocking, but like, Steve, you going to lunch? I'm just going to I'll meet you. I'm just going to hang back, just checking it out. As time passes, things get a little bit weirder. Hold on a second. Yeah, this is not good. This is definitely a thing. Who knows whether it's an incident or not, but it's definitely a thing. So let's go spend some time to figure out what to do about it. We're going to try to fix it. And then we're also going to spend some time to figure out whether or not that worked. Here's my question. Where is diagnose? Niall is senior because he said yes. and not wrong. So this is like, this is an example. It is a real incident, but I don't have to do this. I'm only doing this to be sort of on the record and try to describe without, making you all assume that we're talking about the same thing. But I have no doubt that almost everybody in this room can give me a story about anything, it will take you no time to tell me anything, a story of an incident that looked like this, or others where it didn't go, "You're now leaving the diagnose phase. You have now entered mitigation." I love, Liz, I love Honeycomb for this write-up. If you detect something after it's resolved, one of the authors of ITIL is like, we're going to have something negative. Oh, let's not include it. They'll never know. If we really wanted to look close at something that captures the spirit, right? It's a model. It's whether or not it's not that we put stuff down and the model is wrong. That's reality, is that models are wrong. It's that they can sometimes be depended on and kick off sort of distant decisions that genuinely have consequences. From a cognitive work perspective, if you wanted to look at something that had the vibes, the qualities of this, born from real-world concrete cases of anomaly response, and has been validated across a bunch of different domains of work, and it would look like this. Some of these would kind of disappear, and they would kind of morph into something that looks a little bit like this. This is my killer omnigraphal skills, but it's a representation of something that my colleague, Dr. Woods again, and others developed this from cases in nuclear power control rooms. Note, it's not a linear sequence, and the types of cognitive work represented are intertwined and they're interdependent. So it's not a sequence, it's not a cycle, it's dynamic, and it's a continuous phenomenon. But unfortunately, it does not lend well to populating a spreadsheet. But it is the reality that you probably all recognize. I doubt that there's any, even if you've never seen this diagram before, you could probably work out in your head intuitively what's happening here. Okay, real quick. The topic of repeat incidents. I would like to plug MRoop's SREcon talk in EMEA last year, I think, on repeats. Are there people whose organization is explicit about repeat incidents being significant or different or treated differently? Anybody? All right. I think a couple. Even if it's not explicit, we've come into contact with organizations where they're very specifically counted and they're very specifically tabulated, and they are included in like various sort of reports. I don't work there. I don't exactly know what the impact of those reports are, formally or informally. But I want to say something, and we say this all the time, something similar to like a root cause or even a trigger or something that might be arbitrary. If it doesn't get in the way of our having a discussion about a particular incident or a set of incidents, then that's great. Colloquially, It's fine, just like a lot of the other things. However, I want to make an assertion. You don't have to agree. The criteria in labeling an incident as a repeat, I think I would say that matters more than that there was a repeat. It's almost a little bit of an invitation. Somebody says, oh yeah, this is a repeat, or this happened again. Ooh, the cognitive systems engineer in me, I heard, ask me about more detail, because they're ready to tell you what made it. Like, oh, it was literally at the same point in time, same Unix epoch. Well, no, it was like a couple of minutes. So it was the same people who responded. Oh, no. But what does stick out and feel similar is important, and it varies. So you could ask 3 different people who would label the same thing a repeat about what makes it a repeat, and you may get 3 different answers. This isn't a bad thing. I think it's excellent, and it's a demonstration that different people have different, I'm winking at Tanya, have different views, perspectives, and that's valuable. I'd also say that who gets to label an incident as a repeat can matter a great deal. Not everybody can, at least in a formal or explicit way. Not all that different than who gets to create 5 of those why questions and who doesn't. We need version control for 5 boys. So I picked this case out of the Void. If you're all familiar with the Void that Courtney has carefully curated and expanded into an empire. Second Life, I've never played or used Second Life, but I'm aware of it. And this is a great case. And let's see, it started Thursday, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, it started for a few hours on Thursday, and this stuck out to me, but magically went away on its own. It's never good when a problem just magically fixes itself. It's pretty likely it's going to happen again. The next sentence. The same thing happened again, but once again, it went away on its own. And then they go on to describe like that it happened the next day or whatever. My question is, are these 3 incidents? Or one of them? I mean, they're in the same write-up, so there's something implicit that there's a relationship between them. But are they 3? Because that could screw your average. Or it could help you, maybe you need it. If it's 1, but the numbers will be different. Were 2 of them repeats? These are all examples. The fact is, our experience with incidents are incredibly rich. What we remember most about them is not the metrics associated with them, right? It's the features and the qualities that our experience has. We remember what was completely wild and surprising. We remember what was mind-bogglingly confusing. We remember what's frustrating, and sometimes, and I know there are people here who get this, sometimes we remember what made parts of incidents really satisfying. Almost done here. Incident response. Again, these are just assertions. I'm less invested and married in some of these that I'm presenting. The talk isn't about any one of, or any of them. I'm not here to convince you that my reflections are valid. It's about engaging in the exercise of discussing and questioning. I might assert, I'm going to make an assertion here, that an organization can be the most skilled and efficient at keeping stakeholders up to date about ongoing incidents and still be terrible about learning from them or responding to them. They could be the best in the industry. And keeping stakeholders up to date is an important part of what surrounds incidents. It's different than incident handling. You could say that incident response is a broader umbrella. Maybe you'd say incident management. Maybe you have some other terms for it. But there are activities that people, hands-on practitioners, have skills and expertise to engage in that anomaly response model that Woods and others developed. That's what's happening for them. There are also very reasonable people who are responsible for resourcing and providing support for those people, leadership, business relationships, customers, other parts of the organization, right? They don't have the expertise to do that work. It's not that they're not important, but I'm saying that you can get really, really good in a portion of incident response. It's not monolithic because it's pretty multifaceted at the expense of another. You can get great at all of them, but I'm saying that they're different. I will say this, the best that I think people can do when it comes to responding to an incident, and this is the most, this is my proposal for the most aspirational, and I mean ideal, capital I, when it comes to practitioners responding to an incident, is A, the people who respond to it are the exact people who can recognize immediately what is happening and the exact people to know what to do about it. And that anything else, anything that can support those two bits is paramount. And it's not that other things aren't important, it's just that they're secondary. They may be necessary, but they're secondary. So given the choice between, for example, we have, this is a thought exercise, this is not like a real thing that I'm asking you. If you had to choose between having like 6 significant digits of precision on customer impact in real time, or having the incident more fluidly handled, it would be handled sort of quicker with less disruption and drag. Which one do you think the company would choose? Again, it's a thought exercise. The wild part about this is ironically, is it ironic? I'm not sure. Anyway, interestingly, when that sort of thing happens, this ideal, this aspiration, where the people who show up, like, oh, it's blah, okay. Oh, you're gonna do that? Oh, you do the thing. Okay, I'll do the thing. Boop. All right, go to lunch. When that happens, the event is not often even labeled as an incident because it was handled so incredibly fluidly and it wasn't difficult for them. So you can have you can have all of the, it's about expertise, and anything that supports, expands, augments, amplifies, broadens, diversifies expertise throughout the population of hands-on practitioners who respond to incidents is a worthwhile and productive investment. Full stop. And that can take all kinds of different shapes, many of which many of you already have. It shows up in code review. It shows up in everybody who works at your company. If you were to say, give me 5 people who give amazing code reviews, you're going to get a pretty strong overlap. They're known. Might not be all written on the wiki. Everybody knows, right? That's what expertise is. Anytime you have a situation where tenured, veteran, knowledgeable, people who've seen some shit tell stories, especially amongst and in discussion with new hires, let's just say your competitors are hoping you won't do that. All right, I've talked through a few cherry-picked items, right? I'm hoping you're getting the gist here. These are assumptions examples that I think warrant attention to validate that they're actually accurate. There are many others that I can think of, and I'm not going to keep it up there for you to read. It's a trick for you to look at my slides later. Look at that, I'm done with the talk.